Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to English 1101. I'm so excited that we're here again and really motivated by all of the excellent feedback that you've left in the comments here, both that had to do with the essay at hand and also the extra readings that sort of supplemented some of the information about Matthew Sellis's writing practices. I was really bowled over by how thorough your comments were and how generous your responses were to one another. I like to end on this particular essay because I thought, what a great example of the ways in which, like autoethnography, really feature in and the kind of variety of cultural groups that Matthew belongs to. So, a father, a male, a Korean American, a widower, um, someone who's bilingual, a scholar, a writer. So just so much here. Someone that's grieving, so much to kind of draw from. And I think it's sort of like the kind of pinnacle for our class to end on because we have, up until this point, been doing research on our cultural issues. And here's a stellar example that's going to be published in America's Best Essays for 2020, doing exactly the kinds of work that you've been thinking about this semester, beginning with research of the self and then moving outward into how that research can speak and help and empower others that are feeling similarly othered in different situations. So much to say about the observations that you've made about the rhetorical situation of this particular piece. One of the things I wanted to point out, you guys were all talking about a lot of you were discussing the way in which he uses narrative personal experience to sort of drive and to relate to the reader, to bring an issue that's very personal, but to make it feel, as you've noted in the comments, that everyone has something to weigh in on, that everyone can kind of relate to some kind of experience, whether it was the loss of a spouse or the loss of a family member, friend, acquaintance. So the sort of idea of time more generally kind of moves out and sort of links this very specific feeling of isolation and grief to something that we're all experiencing and trying to understand in terms of this sort of constellations, the sort of solar system, time and physics and space. And so also using secondary source materials, right? Bringing in pieces from like The Guardian and other professional publications. Also, you noted this idea of how the essay was organized, especially this comment about how, it's listed from 1 through 8 as their specific bullet points. It's kind of an interesting organizational feature of the essay. You also might notice, I think it was Davian who pointed out this kind of interesting passage at the end where this last section is very scattered. Once in a novel I wrote, for example, then the first thing I brought after my wife's funeral was a massage chair. Then when I was 23 back in Korea, it's a very interesting set of it's kind of like the grand finale. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Sort of just rifling off a whole bunch of different ideas. Marriage, in my dreams. What's going on here with this ending, with this conclusion? And so, Davian, you did sort of a nice conclusion here. You said, when first reading this passage, I was confused on what it was specifically talking about because he was jumping around a lot. Absolutely. Once I got to the bottom, that the reason for him to jump around in the manner in which he did is because he was suffering from the same issue, just with different scenarios. First, he tells his reader that he is adopted, which in itself is something that children growing up will often struggle with and results with them having negative thoughts, such as, why didn't they want me? Or was I adopted because these people felt bad for me? So that's the first scenario. The next scenario he brings up is the passing of his wife, and now he feels lost because she served as a safe haven, and on and on. The final scenario he speaks of is being Asian and is in an environment that stereotypes his race and even faces racial prejudice in the community. The continuity in all of these scenarios is that he's lacking acceptance, whether social, familial, or racial. And you said it's very kind of an eye-opening approach. Then I open my eyes and the present is pain. I keep my other time close for as long as I can before I forget my dreams. And so it's sort of a nice thought piece, and I think it's kind of interesting how he maneuvers from one point to the next. From different kinds of positions too. It's not necessarily a chronology that follows his life, right? It's a chronology that follows a sort of rhythm of idea, which is thinking about time, a meditation on imposter syndrome, and a meditation on some of the readings that have to do with this feeling of loss. And so they're all kind of brief meditations that add up to this grander idea about the cultural issue of grieving and loss, and how does one continue through one's life the same as before. And he decides that that's not actually possible to do. I wanted to end our class by thinking about something here. He says in the section 6, he says, Capgras delusion is like an extreme mirror to imposter syndrome, which is the feeling that everyone else sees you as an imposter. They don't believe you're a physical replacement, only that you do not belong where they are. In imposter syndrome, which is something that a lot of you related to and maybe is another kind of word for being an outsider, the subject himself is the one in question. The subject himself does not feel loved. This kind of perceived inadequacy often comes up in my Asian American Studies course, especially when my students of color talk about their mostly white school. I understand imposter syndrome as a professor of color and as an adoptee. The more you feel that you are an imposter, the more that feeling affects your behavior. As a child, I became good at math because I was told that real Asians were supposed to be good at math. In Asian American Studies, my students talk about imposter syndrome as dangerous to their sense of self. If an Asian American kid is supposed to get perfect grades, for example, it becomes a failure of self to get a B. You build your story of who you are around the story of who you are supposed to be. Ending on that note of thinking about Matthew's point, you build your story around, you build the story of yourself, of who you are, around the story of who you're supposed to be. I'd like us to think about that as we enter into this final Unit 8 Advocacy 3 portion. What I'd like you to do this week, we're not going to have a reading. We're going to just be thinking about this course, reflecting on some of the things we've read and written. And I'd like you to build out a Unit 8 Final Reflection Google Site page. What I'd like you to do on this post is to reflect on this point that we were just discussing with Matthew Salas. But before you do that, I'd like you to include a brief reflection of about 150 to 300 word response that describes your ability in mastery over any one of the course objectives listed below. Make sure to draw evidence, proof of this mastery from course assignments, essays, and feedback. And I'm sorry that these kind of got all smushed together, but the course objectives are also up here. I'd like you to select one of those and just use this as a kind of sounding board for, proof that you did kind of master and feel confident in one of these course objectives. That's the first part of the Google Site page. The second portion of that Google Site page, I'd like you to, in a final note, address the question raised by Matthew. You build your story of who you are around the story of who you're supposed to be. Who are you supposed to be? What did people expect you to be? Thinking back to your autoethnography, something that you discussed there. And what goals, ideals, hopes, dreams do you hold for yourself as a result of researching more about your specific cultural issue? So have you seen that particular story of who you're supposed to be shift in any way? How and who do you hope to empower? Who are you supposed to be, and who do you want to be do not necessarily need to be the same thing. So as Matthew showed, he had different expectations for himself than what actually happened to him. And so I'd like you to all think of some sort of positive reflections on who you're supposed to be. In this, you can take this sort of creative license in any way you want. You can talk about future goals, aspirations. You can also just talk about how you'd like to be as sort of a fellow human being, what kinds of characteristics and qualities you hope to sort of imbue and replicate in your lived experience. So a kind of nice final reflective piece. If you'd like to include a final sort of image alongside with that portfolio page, I'd be happy to sort of submit that. Just simply click on the final reflection. It'll lead you to a discussion board, and you can post your final Google Site page there. And then by Friday, visit 2 of your peers and respond to them by Friday. So by Wednesday, complete the reflection, and by Friday, complete the peer responses. The final piece to this class is to submit your narrated PowerPoint that you've been working on this week. And again, I'm going to be getting you feedback shortly. So what you might be doing at this point is just deciding how to make your very text-heavy PowerPoints a little bit more balanced in terms of image and text. To find out how to narrate your PowerPoint, I've included another video that explains exactly how to do the narration right under here. under the advocacy presentation folder. So please watch this short, I think it's like an 8-minute video that shows you how to save your work, how to narrate it, and how to upload it. You'll be uploading it to this section called advocacy presentation right here. You'll just be copying and pasting your YouTube link into this section. Here's the rubric that I also talk about in this video, and I want you to consider in your projects, a few of you have Google Site and Google Slide presentations that I wasn't able to access. So simply make sure to go back into your Google credential, your Google account, and allow me to access your Google Slides, because for some of you I just couldn't see it, just in terms of me looking at your drafts. For your final projects, I'm actually just going to be watching the YouTube video of you narrating your PowerPoint presentation. So there won't be any need to have any specific kinds of access. I simply just need the YouTube link to your presentation, which is going to be so exciting because now you'll be able to I'll be able to kind of hear you talking and explaining some of your project. And kind of seeing some of this culminating work flourish. So I'm really excited for this week. I will be dialoguing with you throughout the week, responding to your drafts and helping you along the way as needed. I really enjoyed having you in this class. I thank you for all of the time that you've spent on these projects and really this condensed format. Thank you again to all of those who have made these beautiful banners for our class, and for all of your contributions both in the collaborative reading documents and in your individual e-portfolios that you've built out throughout the semester, a testament to the work that you've done really well in this class. I hope that you feel equipped in some of these course objectives and that you feel readied for, just generally advocating for your cause in the world and being prepared, ready for whatever research, wherever research takes you in English 1102. It's been a real pleasure leading you through this course, and I look forward to seeing you, working with you in the coming week, and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon.